Hey, everybody, this is Nicholas Rogers with the Big Timber Lodge All Are Welcome podcast. And I forgot to hit record with my special guest, Steven from Bullets4Bucks. Steven, you gave an awesome introduction. Please introduce yourself again.
Yeah, so my name's Steven Breznau. I'm the owner and operator, I guess, of the YouTube channel Bullets4Bucks. That's the number 4, so Bullets number 4 Bucks. We also have, Instagram, Facebook, all that good stuff, and a website, www.bullets4bucks.com. Basically, a little bit about me. I was born and raised in Michigan, and then ended up in Wyoming. I've been here about 14-ish years, going on 14 years. Grew up loving fishing, but wasn't really into hunting. And then through basically law enforcement work, got into more into guns and then into hunting out here. So yeah, I started my YouTube channel in 2018, basically as a way to document memories and to maybe help some people along the way. Didn't really have any business aspirations for it, but it's kind of evolved over the years. And so here we are now. I live in Wyoming, north central Wyoming by the Bighorn Mountains. About 10 minutes from the base of them. So obviously love going up there and doing a lot of hunting. My channel primarily consists of, I guess, bolt action rifle reviews and hunting content. A little bit of fishing's thrown in there and some archery stuff and whatnot, but primarily it's bolt action rifle reviews and hunting content. So yeah, it's a little bit about me.
Oh, all right. Thanks, Steven. Also, too, he's sounding very modest right now as well, because I've seen your channel has grown. I think when I started following you, you're around like 80,000 subscribers. And I think 2 months ago, you were at like 140 and now you're at like 166 and you have your 100,000K plaque behind you.
Well, I wish it meant more money for me at this point, to be honest with you. That sounds bad, but it doesn't always mean more money. But maybe in the future, it kind of snowballs. It's a long process. But yeah, I think I only had like 25 or 30,000 subscribers this same time last year, maybe 30,000. And so, and then about halfway through the year, like 6x'd in about 6 months. And so trying to keep that momentum going and hopefully increasing quality and the value I'm giving viewers along the way. Of course, there's always bumps in the road and whatnot, but that's the goal, right? So yeah,
absolutely. Definitely. And I've definitely noticed your channel has kind of picked up on the shorts feed, and I've seen you in the shorts a lot more often recently, but you're doing something that I don't see anybody else doing, which is what I consider like gun porn ASMR.
So I mean, there are some other people doing it. And so, but I kind of adopted it and then made it my own. So kind of made my own play on it. There's not a lot of people necessarily doing it, maybe in the bolt action space. There's some of my friends that are starting to do it now because they've seen it works, which is fine. So I have some friends that are kind of replicating it a little bit, but yeah, trying to bring people, I kind of look at shorts as like, it's a trending thing right now. It's an avenue to grow. And people are enjoying it right now, obviously, given the views. And then it's kind of entertainment or edutainment in a way. And then my long form is really more like education based. Trying to make it entertaining as well, but it's definitely more like in depth. So long form is where you want to go if you want to learn, the way, or, how many locking lugs the bolt action bolt has and what the receiver, design is, and, maybe see it shoot a bunch and stuff like that. That's where you'd go as long form videos. If you want to see something quick and, get your dopamine hit or whatever, then maybe you watch the short form, but we're kind of trying to hit both of those along the way. As well as we have like some deal listings and things like that. We're trying to, and that's really honestly, how we're trying to stay afloat is through like deal listings and affiliate links and things like that. I mean, people will be like, why do you do that? Well, it's you got to keep the lights on somehow. So that's about.
People, I think, just assume because you're on YouTube and you have a large subscriber count or you might have a large view count that you're somehow, Mr. Beast. And that's just, it's not the case. No. I had one short go viral and it hit like 1.4 million views and I made like $200 off that short. And, to expose like the underbelly of YouTube, but you're not making much money from like advertisement endorsements on the YouTube.
Yeah. I don't know that I've ever made a profit on YouTube, and that's not including hours, like my hours. And I do this like 40 hours, 50 hours a week, literally. I mean, between both of the things I do on social media, I probably work 80, 90 hours a week. So it's like, I've
Damn.
never made a profit on YouTube. I'm getting really close maybe to breaking even or making a profit. I probably broke even the last 3 months for the first time ever. I'm probably
good for
down
you.
$75,000 though over the last 7 years on YouTube. I mean, that's just the truth. People will be like, oh, I don't really hide stuff. Like it's not what people
Right.
think. Now, obviously seeing the growth, maybe I can convert that into like paid sponsorships or something. So that's, we'll see. Maybe things will make a good turn, and kind of the beginning of the year is when you push for stuff like that. And so maybe by the end of the year I'll be singing a different tune, but that's just the truth right now.
Right. Because that's an interesting topic. Yeah. That's an interesting topic too that I want to touch on, because like I actually do like there's a couple of channels that I go to actually see what I consider honest firearm reviews, and that would be like Bullets4Bucks, Reloading Weatherby. I've go to Pursuit of Accuracy, and then for like scopes, I'll go to like Cyclops Joe, old Cyclops Joe. Because there's a tinge of a little comedic. Austin from Reloading Weatherby has a little bit of a dark sense of humor with some things, but I really do respect your channel. But like getting a sponsorship, are you ever afraid that if you start getting sponsored, that it could ruin your reputation as an honest reviewer?
A little bit, but I think that I've become more honest. Not that I ever wanted to be dishonest or ever intentionally was, but I think like, I mean, I barely had 2 pennies. Like I was telling you before we started this, like I pawned a violin and a 22 long rifle to have the gas money to drive to Wyoming, and took a job over the phone for the Department of Corrections 13, 14 years ago. I was making $7.25 an hour before that. And I started in Wyoming making like 15. So I really, in reality, was essentially low class, low middle class most of my life. And so, when a company gives you something, when you start a YouTube channel, if they just give you a scope, or even if they lend you a scope, you tend to maybe over exaggerate things. Not like you're so happy that you can come across bias without really like being dishonest in a sense. And so I think that like, if anything, I've become a little bit more like, here's the facts and I'm not going to sugarcoat it. And even with companies that have given me more things for free, and I certainly don't get a lot for free, like almost every bit of ammunition I've used in the channel, I bought. Almost every gun I've reviewed, I bought, maybe sometimes at a discount. So it's like, when people are like, oh yeah, it's like, yeah, you're saying I'm biased against Savage in the same video. Somebody else is saying I'm biased against Ruger is hilarious to me because I bought both of them. And there was no incentive, like I'm not getting anything. But it's kind of like you can always be biased at any tier, like whether you're excited and so you come across biased because you're excited, whether you're you have a bunch of paid sponsorships and so you're trying to like you don't want to ruin your reputation with that company, so you're kind of fudging it. Or in reality, I guess if you were super wealthy, like crazy wealthy, and you had no skin in the game, so to speak, then maybe it would be easier to be not biased. But
like the gun collector.
My goal is to really just be more and more authentic and more transparent the longer I do this and the more I do it. And that means I have to be careful on how I come across without even realizing it. Right. But I don't, companies, I basically tell them, now it's like, if they do send me something, or like now maybe like I have like maybe one company literally that's paid me for something literally, and it's been like case by case, like for one video here, one video. And it's probably just enough, honestly, to cover like the ammunition expense, not even my time. Right. So it's not like huge amounts. And my goal is to be even more honest. Like, it doesn't matter. It shouldn't matter. And like, I did piss off a company last year. Kind of. I mean, they sent me a gun at.
Care to share who that was or no?
I mean, sure. Yeah, I'll share who it was. So it was Bergara. So Bergara, not them directly, but a marketing agency that I love and that I hope to continue to work with, and that they represent several brands. I love these guys, right? Like, I still want to work with them. And they sold me a gun from Bergara, essentially 40 to 50% off. So I still bought it. And it was over $1,000 of my own money to buy it. And I probably went through $1,000 of my own ammunition that I bought initially. Eventually they sent me some to help test it some more, because I basically said, hey, there's a problem. And they sent me some ammunition, but there was never any money given to me directly. And the review, in my opinion, is just honest, right? Like, it sucked at first. Like, it couldn't shoot groups with like multiple different types of ammunition. I swapped scopes. I cleaned it. I mean, I spent months trying to figure out the problem. And eventually we found one ammunition that shoots MOA, sub MOA, like 50% of the time so far. I still have the gun and I'm still good. Actually, I'm going to do follow-up reviews on it. We're going to see how things pan out. And it's like, yeah, I know. And you know, Bergara would replace it. If I sent it back, they would fix it, right? Or they would replace it. They would do that probably for anybody. And that's true. And I think I said that in the video, right? But here's the thing that I told them, and I think it did probably rub them the wrong way a little bit, even though they were kind about it and understanding it. It was like, hey, if I send back every rifle I have a problem with before and then I redo the video, I will never have a problem rifle. Is that really transparent and honest to my audience?
True.
Is that giving them valuable information? So like, I can't say there hasn't been times where I've had something given to me or sent to me where I haven't tried to fix it first. I can't say that's true because there has been. But I'm trying to be like more and more just raw, even if it pisses people off, because I want to bring content to my viewers that they can trust and that gives them value. And if I don't want, you know, somebody making $40,000 a year to spend $2,000 on a rifle because I recommended it, and then they get a lemon just like I did, but I hit it. You know, I don't want that to happen. So
yeah, I think now that I remember, I'm thinking back to almost 2 years ago, or maybe I think it was around 2 years ago. I think you and I both bought similar Weatherbees, and we both were having similar issues.
The Backcountry
with
2.0?
the Weatherbees. Yes, the Backcountry 2.0. I had it in the titanium with the steel barrel. And I think we commented on each other's videos like almost 2 years ago. And you were at the shooting range and you were having similar stuff. But yeah, we both, mine was the firing pin was not set to the correct depth with mine. And it was an easy fix, but yeah. What was your issue?
The carbon fiber barrel, but I really truly I think the head spacing was a little bit off, or there was a burr, and I actually just basically shot it to where it now works, which isn't probably the best or safest thing to do. But like brass was getting stuck really bad, and like right there, you know, $100 a box ammunition right out the gate was getting stuck really bad in their chamber, like to the point where I felt like I was going to break the bolt handle off, you know, trying to pound this stuff out.
Wow.
To get it to come open. Eventually, and it wasn't shooting that accurate at first either. Over just shooting it and using it, it's kind of worked itself out. The chamber is still a little bit tighter than I would like it. Like it's still like if it gets really dirty, if I'm in adverse conditions, I feel like it starts to stick a little bit still. But it shoots great now. I mean, it does. It does shoot great now. But when you're spending $3,500 or $3,000 on a rifle, and I bought that full price from a retail store, even though I live 10 minutes from their headquarters. I live right next to them.
From Sheridan,
I know almost everybody who works there. It's like, I had to be honest, right? Though, like, I mean, I didn't want to irritate them either. And I probably have, but and I know a bunch of them, so I felt bad. But it's like, I spent like $3,000 on this rifle, which is crazy even for me, right? I mean, it's crazy for me. And immediately having more problems than I've ever had with a $400 rifle ever. So, you know, I just had to be honest in the review. Now, I've done a lot of follow-up reviews on that rifle and said a lot of good things about that rifle. Like I've said the problems, and then I've said, hey, like it's shooting great now. Hey, it's worked out, you know, in the end. Hey, they would have fixed it. They would have. And I've had other rifles, you know, I have a laser guard that shoots fantastic, no problems. It's really, you know, made by Howa essentially. And then, we just tested that talent. We just tested the talent. My buddy who lives right here and has a little YouTube channel, Steve from Wyoming, is his YouTube channel. That's literally the name of his YouTube channel.
Hey, Steve from Wyoming.
Yeah, he has really good fishing content. He was a pro bass fisherman for 25 years. Anyways, he bought the rifle, but we've done tons of reviews on it. We did review on it, and I did a bunch of testing on it. And it's a Howa, but they did a lot of things to that rifle in Weatherbee's factory essentially. And I've never had a Howa I've ever had a problem with, and people always say, well, yeah, and I take a lot of flack from that. And I'm a Mr. Howa fanboy, this and that and the other thing. Well, I've never had a Howa I've had a problem with ever. this may have been Howe's fault. It might have been Weatherby's fault. I don't know, because there was a lot of modifications that happened on Weatherby, like when Weatherby gets it. But it's really struggled to shoot accurately. I mean, we went through
Really?
oh yeah,
What's
like
it chambered in?
5 different 300 Win Mag. It's the new Weatherby Talent.
300 Win Mag.
I was recommending that rifle left and right too, honestly, because I'd shot it and
Okay.
I looked at it, and so I was recommending it a lot because I really trusted it, and I had to kind of steer away from that. Now I'm like, ooh, maybe I jumped the gun on that one, because we went through over 120 rounds before we could even get like a sub MOA group out of it, basically. And we went through like
Wow.
5-6 different ammunitions. We spent 3 or 4 range trips, and he did the break-in recommended by Weatherby to a T. I'm talking like he did like the most in-depth break-in I've ever seen in my life, and still had problems with it. So, and yeah, he went there in person because he lives here, and they told him like basically shoot it some more. And I was like, that wasn't a good answer, in my opinion. I said that in my review. And then they said, well, if we range test it and it shows that it shoots accurately, you have to pay the $200 for the range test. If it doesn't, then we'll fix it. I thought that's ridiculous, because it's like a $1,200-$1,300 rifle.
Right.
And I was like, to me, I put that in my review. Probably irritated him more. I love those guys. I don't want to irritate them. Obviously, I would love to work with them. Probably will never happen given the situation. Maybe I'm wrong. But I'm like, hey, I don't think that was the right response.
Yeah, that's an interesting thing. I mean, I love my Weatherby. I'm happy that I own it. I wish. So I kind of started off with I was like, oh, I'm going to get a Bagara B14 HMR as my elk hunting rifle. It was too damn heavy. I mean, with the scope on it, with the sling, bipod, whatever, it was close to like 12 pounds. And I'm like, this is not a good Rocky Mountain elk hunting rifle. So the next season, I saved up and went the opposite direction and bought the Backcountry 2.0 titanium with the, carbon fiber stock and the titanium,
Was that the Gen 1 or the Gen 2? Did that have the
it was the Gen 2.
Okay, so they fixed
it did have the recoil
pad problems. Because the first Gen 1 had issues where if you stored it on its butt, it would permanently deform the recoil pad.
Really?
I don't know if you ever knew that.
Well, I need to check mine then, because I don't know. I don't know now. Well, I know it was the Backcountry 2.0. It wasn't the Backcountry 1.0. It was the 2.0.
Then you're good. It was the first. They would permanently deform really badly because the sides weren't supported. They weren't thick enough, essentially, on the hexagonal recoil pad.
Right.
But anyways.
Well, another thing that I noticed about it too, I think when I was reading through the instruction booklets, it said, do not shoot this on a lead sled. Because it can because the rifle was so lightweight, it could actually damage the stock if you had it in a fixed position where there was no ability for your shoulder to absorb some of the recoil. If I remember correctly, I don't know. I could have just been making that up.
You could be right. So those Peak 44 stocks, that company was bought or started essentially by Weatherby. They own Peak 44. It's actually one of the only things that actually truly manufacture is that stock, in a sense. And those were designed, I believe, by a former employee of Gunworks, which is also in Wyoming, over by Cody. And they are an excellent stock, but they don't have an aluminum bedding block. And it's my understanding that the buttstock area is completely hollow. And so a lot of carbon fiber stocks like that are filled with a foam or a composite or this or that to kind of reinforce it. That stock is excellent, I actually think, but in a sense, kind of maybe fragile. So I could see them saying that, and that's because they wanted to go so freaking lightweight. I mean, that thing is crazy light.
Well, that one is light, but I saw you at SHOT Show with the Howa super light 16-inch barrel coming in at 4 pounds 2 ounces or whatever the heck it was. How did that feel?
3 ounces. Oh, well, I have the regular 20. I think it's a 20-inch version, and I have videos out on it if you guys want to see them. But that thing shot sub MOA out of the box, and I couldn't believe it because I'm not inherently good at shooting an ultralight rifle. Nobody really is usually, because it's just more difficult. And I was blown away. So all they did was make a shorter barrel version to make it even lighter and more compact, mainly for suppressor users. And so they're supposed to send me one. That is a company, and hopefully I try to disclose that if I get something now. Hopefully I remember to disclose it. Sometimes I forget in the video when I do the video. They are sending me one, at least on loan. I don't know if I'll get to keep it. And they are covering my ammunition expenses. So there you have it. But anyway, I love it. Now the stock isn't as well finished, like it isn't as well finished as the Peak 44. It's not as pretty as the Peak 44, in my opinion. Like it's just not as, but it's made by Stocky Stocks out of Florida, I believe. I think that's where they're at. It is similar in some ways. It's got a thinner recoil pad made by Limb Saver on it, but those things, I mean, if it's anything like the regular full length barrel version, which I believe was 20 or 22 inches that I have, I expect nothing but to be blown away. And I'm going to throw a suppressor on it because it's awesome for backpacking hunt. You can have a shorter ultralight can on there, and the overall length's still going to be extremely short because that 16.25 inch barrel. And I think they're only available in like 6.5 Creedmoor 308, maybe 243. But yeah, I mean, I was impressed by it. Now it has a slimmed down receiver action, so it's still called a Howa 1500 like receiver, but it's actually not a long action and it's not a short action. At one point, I'd actually put out wrong information on this because I didn't know. But it's actually a slim down.
Is it still following like the Weatherby, like 6 lug, 9 lug, depending on the cartridge?
No. So this Howa Superlight is basically, in my opinion, a slim down action between a long and a short action in a way. It's not a mini, or maybe it's just like a short. But anyway, it's slimmed down. Because of that, I feel like it is a little bit rougher to run. Even though it's still a 90-degree bolt throw, it still has 2 locking lugs. It has an M16 style extractor. It has the same like receiver design. It's not quite as smooth out of the box as even the regular short and long Howa 1500. But I mean, I've talked to them many times and said, hey, you need to polish the bolt like Bergara does. All you guys got to do is polish the raceways, polish the bolt. You'll instantly blow this market away way more than you are. Like your biggest problem everybody's going to talk about is your trigger and your bolt, like how smooth it is. Because people go on feel, they don't go on quality always. Because it's not always the same thing, actually. Feel isn't always quality. And so I don't think that Japan is going to ever change that trigger. Like they are very like, which is whatever. It's still a great trigger, but I used to say it was user adjustable because it kind of is. But then I got away from that because you kind of have to remove the glue and you kind of have to mess with it. And I was like, hey, you know what? Basically, in today's standards, I'm not going to say this trigger is user adjustable anymore. Because, user adjustable nowadays means, just, put an Allen key in it. Basically, don't even usually have to remove it from the stock, make a few clicks and blah, blah, blah. So I've kind of gotten away from that. It's a great trigger, in my opinion, still. But yeah, it tends to be heavy in today's market. And it's not, in my opinion, easily user adjustable. And so they're kind of failing on that, even though it's a great trigger design. And you can get a Timony, I believe, to replace it. But yeah, the action, they just need to polish that bolt and they would be a lot more competitive for people's feel in today's market. Because people are feeling the Tikka T3X and they're feeling the Bergara and they're going, oh, I want that.
Right. My wife has a Tikka T3X Rough Tech Light, and that's her like elk hunting rifle. I have the Bergara, and man, both of those, their action is just so damn smooth. I mean, it's like glass, for being, sub $1,500 rifle.
Yeah. Well, they used to be sub 1,000 in a way. I mean, everything jumped about $200 to $300, 2 or 3 years ago. So, but
right.
Yeah. I still think Howa has great value under $1,000 because you can still sometimes find the Howa HS Precision model. A lot of people with Howa, they don't realize there's so many models. They still think the only model out there is a Howa Hogue, which is like the cheapest, junkiest. I don't even recommend it really, but because the stock is really the only difference. The barrel action, because Legacy Sports imports them, and they just slap different stocks and chassis into them. So really, it's always the same barrel action mostly, but.
Well, I guess that brings up the next question which is what one of our mutual friends told me to talk to you about. But like I have a Savage Weather Warrior that I purchased when I was 16, 17 for deer hunting out in New England, 30-06 synthetic stock, no detachable magazine, no base plate that opens up. It's just stainless steel hardware with a synthetic stock. And last year I got some Meade Ioxus 30-06 ammunition, and I shot a .38 MOA group with the 3-shot round or 3-round group. And that rifle literally cost me less than $500 when I bought it as a kid, and it came with like a Bushnell scope on it. What are your thoughts for people getting into hunting or long range shooting that are like, oh, well, I have to buy this brand or spend at least this much money. Like, is there
No.
some validity to that? Like, what are your thoughts on there?
The market is constantly evolving at a pretty quick rate. I mean, 10 years ago, you couldn't even get like a true PRS or precision style rifle for under like $2,000, only like, well, maybe 12, 15 years ago. So, I mean, it's, and scopes were all second focal plane unless you spent over like 1,000 or 1,200. Now you can spend $400 and get a first focal plane scope. So things are constantly changing. And of course, the prices, everything's gone crazy since COVID. But I think that you don't need to spend a lot of money. That's not true. At the same time, there's kind of this caveat to where if you spend more money, I do think that to a certain degree, you can buy easier precision. That's a really weird way of saying it. Like if you have a 12-pound, 15-pound chassis rifle. What?
Yeah. Do you play video games at all?
Not really traditionally, not much.
So there's some video games out there, especially now, like in modern world, where you don't necessarily have to pay for the game, but you can buy stuff in game, right? Mm-hmm. And the more you purchase in game, the better you're going to do. So it's called like pay to play. And so that's almost like what it seems like you're saying is maybe with some of the higher quality stuff that you're going to spend money on, you're paying to play, and it's going to bring you some benefits.
This is a convoluted, going to be a convoluted answer because it's kind of a complex question in my opinion. So if you spend, I'm not saying a lot, but say $1,000 or more, and you get a Ruger precision rifle, which is kind of bottom of the barrel for a entry-level PRS gun still. And they were really the ones who kind of introduced a budget precision rifle back in the day. So kind of was savaged a little bit as well. But so if you have a 15-pound rifle with a cold hammer forged barrel, you're probably like, I can take my mom out who's like shot a gun 3 times in her life. And if I set up everything for her, because that's actually a huge part that people overlook too, is knowing how to dial the dope and how to do this and how to do that. People overlook all that, but that's actually the harder part to a greater degree. But she could probably shoot a 1/4-inch group, right, with the right ammunition. But that's, I've done the hard work of figuring that all out. But still, because it's just an easy gun to shoot. So to a certain degree, I don't know that you can kind of buy accuracy, but more so probably durability and ease of shooting. Like how easy is it to shoot accurately, consistently? How easy is it to shoot accurately, consistently? But at the same time, and this is where I kind of contradict myself, I have shot $300 rifles, maybe they're $500 now, given the market, more accurately than $3,000 rifles before. In fact, I've had less problems with sub $1,500 guns than guns over $1,500, which is also interesting. So I think with what you generally get when you spend over $800, we'll say, or $1,000, is maybe a little better components, better durability, and maybe more consistency over time.
Right.
But not necessarily more accuracy, because you can pick up a Savage or a Ruger American and it might shoot more accurately than, you can't get more accurate, right? It's literally as accurate as it almost gets, minus maybe some custom hand-lapped, $12,000 bench rest rifle. But like basically it's with modern machining, you can get extreme accuracy, but what you might see over time with something really cheap is like components start to break or stuff starts to fail, or you get shifting in the bedding of the receiver. And so you might go to the range and shoot super accurately, and then a year later it shoots like garbage, or your point of impact shifts because you have these other variables. Same with like maybe cheap scopes. And so, but you don't need to spend a lot. At the end of the day, if you have a very low budget, you just buy the best you can within your budget.
Right.
And don't worry about it. Don't overthink it, because the truth is that you might outshoot the guy with a $15,000 rifle, especially if he doesn't know what he's doing.
Yeah.
I've seen people come to the range with an Accuracy International who don't know how to dial out to 500 yards or 1,000 yards, and they absolutely suck at shooting in every other way. And so you're going to outpace them anyway.
There's a gun shop that local here. It's called Springs Armory. Shout out the Springs Armory. They're my FFL. but I met a guy there that was like, I only carry a staccato for self-defense. And I just was like, why? He's like, this is the best gun made. No offense to staccato. They are fantastic firearms when they're running correctly, but they're extremely finicky. I've known of them before they were staccato when they were STI. And then not only in addition to that, if you're only carrying it for self-defense, typically a self-defense encounter is going to be from like, me to the wall and behind my realm. And you don't necessarily need to have a race gun in order to self-defend. And then also what a lot of people don't realize too is like, if you have to ever use your firearm as self-defense, you are going to lose that firearm. You were, in law enforcement. If you have to use it, they're going to confiscate it. And like, it's almost impossible you're ever going to get it back. So it's one of the reasons why like I carry like a Glock or a SIG for self-defense. But if I go to the range, I'm going to bring something else out that's nice. And I think also too in the gun culture as well, especially like with gun tubers, oh my God, like it's turned into almost an entertainment business where people love to see like torture tests done to firearms, especially like in the pistol worlds where they're like, hey, let me put this red dot sight on my pistol and then throw it at a tree and then run it over. And now I'm going to freeze it in the lake. And then, I'm going to bust it out once it thaws in spring. And then I'm going to see if it shoots. And then if it doesn't shoot correctly, people are like, oh man, this gun sucks. I'm never going to buy that gun. Where realistically, I'm like, you're never going to beat your gun up like that.
Well,
you're never going to outshoot the average shooter, especially like a hunter, is never going to outshoot their barrel. Right. What do you think?
Oh yeah. I agree with you. I mean, I would say carry what's appropriate for this situation, and then carry what you're comfortable with and accurate with, and what you find reliable, like as a general rule. So that might be a little bit different, and what you can afford. But I generally agree with you. I think is it Brendan Herrera? I don't even know. Like, right. He's a big YouTuber longer.
Yeah. Right? AK dude.
I have it on good authority. He has said reviews get no views. And so, and it's true. Like I've even like, I try to do some stuff more entertaining now myself to grow, right? Because there is some truth to that. So a lot of these gun tubers have gone to really entertainment. And it's not bad. It's entertaining. But you have to know how to navigate it, right, as the viewer, and not everybody does. Like, okay, this is just BS for entertainment, which is cool, it's fine, or this is like what I'm going to base my decision off of. But I mean, sometimes I do things myself to kind of rile feathers, right? Like obviously, I'll hate on Glocks sometimes. I carried a Glock for 14 years, almost every day. I do think that there's better pistols out there than a Glock. But if I'm going to go in Alaska in the bush and just beat the crap out of it, I'm probably going to carry a Glock. Partly because I don't want to ruin a better gun, but partly because it's probably going to work, and it's going to work good enough for what I need, right? Because I have guns that are more accurate out of the box than a Glock. Some of them are the same price. Like I love Canic for its.
Their triggers.
I've had great luck with. I pulled a Canic out. 14 years of training with the Glock. I pulled a Canic out of the box. Was the same price. Bought it, and it shot it more accurately than I ever shot a Glock the first day, and ever since. So like, but at the same time, like, is this or this going to make a difference? Probably not in most. In most self-defense cases, right? So. And so, do you want to carry the thing that might be more reliable, or more this or more that? It's personal preference a little bit, but
let me ask you this, because you are a very avid hunter, and you're not just an avid hunter, you're a successful hunter. Like you are successful. You are being modest right now, good sir. You are successful compared to the average Joe that tries to go out once a year. Now, with that being said, if you are telling somebody, hey, this is what you need to do to pick out like a good rifle, what's going to be like more important as far as like caliber, comfortability of shooting, or like the quality of the actual rifle? Like what's important out of those three, and in what order?
So you said caliber, comfortableness, like ergonomics. And
so like, let's talk about like that too, because I'm going to touch on something like with Austin. He hates it. 6.5 Creedmoor, right? Like, let's say you're somebody that wants to use a 6.5 Creedmoor because you have flinch from big boom sticks and you don't want to shoot a 30 cal because it kicks too hard. and it makes you flinch, right? So comfortability or caliber, and let's say you're going for Rocky Mountain elk, and then also like a rifle build. Like what's the most important
Quality.
thing for you?
Okay. For hunting,
Mm-hmm.
it's changed over the years, honestly, as
Yeah.
I've learned. I would say now if comfortability has to do with weight, then that's a big factor, depending on for elk. But I would say caliber's actually become way more important than it ever has. And that's because through trial and error and mistakes, I know the cost of a mess up, right? Of it not a perfect hit or not a good blood trail. That's a tough one.
Right.
I don't know that I'll get you a perfect answer, but I think that like for elk, I have used 6.5 Creedmoor successfully, but I don't use it anymore on elk because I
Really?
had one jump. I had one jump. I made a less than perfect shot, and I actually had a rangefinder. I thought it was me, and maybe it was, but I had a rangefinder that I actually sent in the factory, and they actually did say it was broken. So I was getting wrong ranges. So I made a less than desirable shot on an elk. It jumped a fence onto a ranch, and the ranch owner would not let me recover it, even though I watched it die. And it was, but it made it farther than. After that, I said, I'm not even going to take that chance anymore. Like, why, like, if that had been a 300 Win Mag or 300 PRC with a good bullet, maybe that wouldn't have happened.
And that's why you now hunt with the 416 Barrett.
I actually hunt elk with 300 Win Mag and 300 PRC a lot. And 300 PRC is I shoot a lot of 300 PRC. So, but I would actually tell people, I would recommend 300 Win Mag. Not 300 PRC. The reason I shoot a lot of 300 PRC is because that's what's being promoted right now in marketing. And so that's what I end up doing what I'm doing. But anyways, caliber is a big one. And I would say quality. I would say actual comfortability is probably last for me. Durability, if that's part of that. So I say quality because you want a gun that's reliable and durable. And then caliber is important. I'd say comfortability is last. Now, the older I get, the more health problems I have, the more I want to like certain things. I might want a really light rifle, but also with that, I'm probably going to try to get closer instead of taking a longer shot. I'm going to probably be even closer if I'm hunting with a really light rifle, just because people tend to shoot a light rifle, not as accurate, blah, blah, blah. The barrel's probably not as long. You're going to have more drop. There's a lot of, less velocity, things of that nature.
What are your thoughts? What are your thoughts on this? Like this, it's not a new trend, but it seems like it's more mainstream now. This like ultra long range hunting with these boutique cartridges. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think that long range hunting out west where I live has been actually, I think it was more popular 5 years ago than it was now. Gunworks really made it mainstream in places like that. They really, like a lot of places. And then there was some pushback, and probably rightly so. Like, hey, this is too far. This is too much. This is probably unethical. And that was probably not unwarranted. I've never really got caught up though in like, oh my goodness, I'm so worried. I mean, that's going to sound bad, but I'm not like, oh yeah, this is so unethical. This is so ethical. That's going to depend a lot on the person and the equipment and the situation you're in. And I'm not God, and I'm not going to probably say, hey, this, unless it's grossly ridiculous, I'm probably not going to be like, okay, this is wrong. But
so I have an uncle that lives in Kodiak, Alaska, and he's in his late 60s, and he's lived there for 40 years, and he works at a sporting goods store out in Kodiak, and he's a guide. He does hunting guides and whatnot. And he told me for the average hunter that comes to Kodiak to go on a hunt, he won't let them take a shot further than 250 yards just because it's a shot placement thing. Now, he said, if you can shoot, you could shoot. And if you understand how to dope your rifle, it's a different story. But he said for like the average hunter, he won't let them take a shot further than like 250. So, and I don't agree with that. I take shots further than that. I've shot a deer at like 475 yards personally. So,
yeah. I mean, I think that like, also it depends on what you're hunting. If you're hunting a grizzly bear, you probably don't want to mess it up. And so like, it's going to depend on where you're hunting, what you're hunting, the conditions you're hunting in. So like, the more I've hunted, the closer I like to be And it's not because I'm like, oh, I want to feel like I'm going to make this is going to rub some people the wrong way. Like, oh, I want to feel like, it's a real hunt, or I want to get really close because I have to prove this or that, or be more athletic. It's not that. It's simply like, I can look at past mistakes and be like, okay, I don't want to, the risk isn't worth it for me.
Right.
And so, it isn't worth it for me. It's not good for the animal from an ethical standpoint, but it isn't worth it for me. And so I actually have like if you talked to me 4 or 5 years ago, I'd probably be like, oh, like 800 yards inside of 800 yards is good, inside of 800. And I still have some rifles on a perfect day in perfect conditions, no fatigue, like all the stars are aligned, no wind. I might do something like that on like a deer, but I like to keep everything inside of 400 now.
Yeah.
And even 300 if I'd rather possible. Be inside of 300, but 400 is kind of where I like to keep it inside of. Occasionally I'll go a little bit more, a little bit less, or I mean, I'll always go less, right? But occasionally I'll go a little bit longer, like maybe 460 or 5 if everything's perfect, or maybe it's an elk with a huge chest cavity. I have a huge, really
high probability of
with me, and everything seems right, and I the rifle I'm using I know well, because that's a huge part. Like it's actually funny. The more mistakes I've made more mistakes because the more rifles I've gotten because of what I do with the rifle reviews. So because of that, I'm always like trying new rifles, hunting. So I actually is really like not optimal at all. Like I would much rather just have the same 3 rifles, like one for each thing, and then like kind of like, okay, this is good for deer to antelope and varmints and elk and above. I'd rather have that because I'd probably actually have a lot less more mistakes. Same with scopes, like I'm learning new scopes, new dials, blah, blah, blah. But ideally, you don't have that, right? And so maybe I would be more comfortable shooting longer, but that makes me even want to be closer, because now I'm like, great, I've shot this thing this year, but I haven't shot it like for 5 years. And so I'm less confident in it. And because of that, I want to be even closer. And so sometimes I'll take that into consideration as well. But long range hunting, I mean, what is that, right? Some people that's 1,200 yards. Some people that's 800 yards. Some people that's 400 yards. Some people that's 200 yards. If you're from Michigan, anything beyond 100 is crazy, right? So it's going to depend a lot on the situations, but you definitely probably shouldn't be taking shots that you're like, yeah, there's a 50% chance I won't make the first hit or it'll be bad. Probably not a good idea. Right. And that's going to depend on the person and the day and all that. But, kind of long-winded around the bush answer on that.
Yeah, no, dude, I dig it. I dig it because this is like the type of conversation that I like to have with people, is because, it's there's a balance between ethics and willing to take a chance, especially if you're out like elk hunting on public lands, and if you actually are lucky enough to see an elk on public, especially here in Colorado, you might be faced with like a 500 or a 600 yard shot. And then it comes down to what's the ethics. Like, okay, if I'm using a 6.5 Creedmoor and I'm using Hornady ELDX out of my rifle, and it says that at like 450 yards, I'm capping out at like 1,500 foot-pounds of energy. And Colorado recommends that you don't shoot an animal unless you have at least 1,500 foot-pounds of energy when it's bullet strikes. Okay, but now all of a sudden there's an elk that's at 550, 600 yards. Do I take that risk? You know what I mean? Because what if it's just this gorgeous elk, huge, like 8x8, gorgeous tines, front tines coming up, floaters and all this crazy stuff. And it's sunset on the last day of the season, and it's cresting over the hill, and you have this beautiful silhouette. You don't even need to see the coloring on it. You have this gorgeous silhouette, and it's standing broadside, and it's just bugling or something. I don't even know. You don't get to bugle on a hunt with a rifle, but It
took me 60 days of public land hunting over 2 seasons, almost completely solo, having Walmart equipment, not knowing what I was doing, being self-taught by Randy Newberg's YouTube videos, to learn an elk hunt and to get my first elk. It took 60 days. And so I've been in those situations. It's like, it's easy to say, well, I'd never take that shot, or I'd never do something, but add fatigue, exhaustion, lack of sleep, 30 days into a hunt, and you got one opportunity. And I'm not going to sit here and be like, oh, you shouldn't have done that. I'm not going to, that's just, I've walked in those shoes before. So it's probably not the best thing to be like, hey, I wouldn't do that. At the same time, it's probably like, you might be like, maybe there could have been, maybe it wasn't the best decision, but
Right.
I'm not gonna be like, oh, you were a bad person because you did that.
Right.
You know, everybody's got their view. There's some kind of like grossly obvious things, that it's like, okay, that's obviously was really
Right.
stupid. That was really dangerous. And obviously you shouldn't do those things. But and each situation is unique and different. I've actually missed a lot of shots at inside of 400 yards because of extreme fatigue or lack of sleep, not because I didn't practice, not because I didn't know the weapon system. You know what I'm saying? And everything seemed right. And I either, like maybe I just dialed completely wrong just because I wasn't, you know what I'm saying? And then there's people like archery hunting is, well, I'm better because I archery hunt, but in truth, I've actually wounded and lost more animals myself archery hunting than I ever have with a rifle. And I think that's true for a lot of people. And people are like, well, archery hunting is way more ethical. Actually, it could be argued it's less ethical by a lot of people. I do both. I'm not going to sit here and say, whatever. I don't.
Well, it improves your chances of being able to draw or get something if you're doing all the forms, muzzleloader, archery, and whatnot. But like even here in Colorado has like stupid laws with muzzleloader where you can't use like all the modern muzzleloading gear that makes your chances of actually shooting and killing an animal more successful. And I think that's stupid. Like we're not living in the 1700s. Like the Constitution wasn't just written and like we don't need to have a season of hunting that's it's adhering to our forefathers' traditions. I mean, I guarantee 95% of the people in the past that were around in 1776, if they had the opportunity to go hunting with a modern 300 rum or some 50 cal smoothbore musket, they would choose the 300 rum. And it wouldn't even be a question.
It's so.
Have you ever shot a 300 rum? Just wondering.
I think so. I've never owned one. I think so.
My stepdad, or not stepdad, my father-in-law has one, and it's like an anti-tank gun. I think there's it's ridiculous.
300 PRC is close. It's close. It's not quite 300 rum, but so it's so funny. And there's always two sides to every story, and it's hard to unless you're really well versed in every side, it's hard to have truly like a good objective educated opinion. But it's so funny because you'll have people that are like, well, rifle hunting should be wrong, bow hunting should be wrong. They fight both, crossbows should be wrong. This should be wrong, and it's like I do what's legal. because and I try to obey the laws, which is more than actually a lot of hunters, believe it or not. I really try to follow the laws. And a lot of hunters don't even do that. And the same hunters that talk a lot of crap don't do that. But I think that
you grew up in Michigan, right? Like I grew up in New England as a kid, and there were definitely some redneck bubbas that I knew that had 12 gauge shotguns that were rigged to shoot arrows. And during archery season, they were out hunting with an arrow, but it was really being shot out of a 12 gauge. I don't know if you ever saw those. But that was something
I heard about it, but there's a lot of stuff, and it's usually the people that talk the most about how other people are wrong. They're breaking the most laws, in my experience. But I think that like it is weird how like they'll be like, oh, you can't have this equipment because that would make you more accurate. You can't use this scope because it'll make you more, like has a rangefinder. You can't use this bow thing because it'll make it like. It's like, when did being lethal become bad? If we're talking about ethics, if being lethal is
facts,
like it should be more ethical if you're more lethal. Now I do understand that they're like, well, we want it to be still sporting, like we don't want you to just go out there to slay. I kind of get that, but at the same time, here's the really weird part that a lot of people, I've watched podcasts, and I sometimes really in the comments section get pretty blatant. I'm surprised I haven't gotten in trouble on YouTube for some of my comments on other people's podcasts, because there's people that oftentimes are only hunt private, oftentimes come from a lot of money, and then they're telling everybody else what they should do, like they're on an ethical high horse, and that does irritate me. But they do it in such a way that's like, oh, you shouldn't use a crossbow or this or that because like it's ruining our hunting season. And I'm thinking, do you realize that you guys are down here? Like, picture this: you're down here and you're all fighting and arguing over like, you're ruining my hunting season, you're killing too many animals, and the government Game and Fish, DNR, whoever's setting that. Now, maybe a lot of times in Wyoming, it's big ranches that own the government that make these laws to begin with, which is a problem in Wyoming. But anyway, they're setting the quotas and they're looking at mortalities, like how many tags are being filled. They're looking at mortality rates, and
Right.
they're like, you're like arguing over stuff that literally makes no difference, because like the tags are all going to still, like the same amount of tags is always going to be issued, whether it's resident or non-resident. The same amount of tags are probably always going to be filled, because if all of a sudden crossbow hunters are filling all the tags, they're just going to lower the quota. But at the end of the day, the same amount of animals are probably going to be killed. They're going to manage the herds the same ratios, and you literally are arguing about stuff that is stupid, because it makes no difference. You're down here and up here they're laughing at you, because they're actually setting, like, if they're managing a herd to, we want to keep this percentage, we want to keep this percentage. That's not like, your hunting experience is probably roughly going to be the same, no matter what. It's they're deciding that.
Well, in Colorado, because I hunt with a buddy of mine, it is illegal in the state of Colorado to use electronic communication devices to talk to one another.
It is in Wyoming as well.
That is the stupidest shit ever. If I'm working the backside of a ridge and he's in a valley on the other side of the mountain, and I'm going to push a herd up, I should be able to radio in. If I'm doing it all by foot, saying, hey, I'm pushing a herd up over the mountain, get ready. And, I'm going to be towards your 6. Don't accidentally shoot me. I don't see why you shouldn't be able to do that personally. I can understand them saying, hey, you can't fly a drone to look for a herd. You can't fly an airplane to look for a herd. But to say you can't even use like a walkie-talkie to communicate with your hunting partner, I think that's silly, personally.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, there's two sides to that coin. I haven't really taken a strong position either way. I think that there's like, it's like, and at the same time, I don't like to get too wound up in it, because at the end of the day, I want to encourage hunters. I want to promote hunting, and I follow the laws, and I want to promote people to follow the laws. If they don't agree with them, then go through the avenues to fight those laws with the government, but just like, to a certain degree, bickering about them too much doesn't do any good either. And I'm guilty of that myself. Right. But like, there are laws that I don't agree with, obviously. And there's things like they made wireless trail cams illegal in Wyoming. Well, it's like, I can understand that. Like live stream, I can understand, because that does seem like really a little bit much. But like, I had ones that would send me pictures like an hour later. Well, that saved me thousands of dollars in gas money, because I have to go on public land and I don't own a ranch. So it's like, hey, they're like, well, you can just go there and check it. It's like, but that not everybody has the money or time to do that. So it did a disservice to those people that are just regular Joes who don't have the gas money or time to go check a trail cam, every other day or something like that, where it was nice for those reasons. But I understand. I think there was sides. But
yeah, I think there was actually a farm. I think it was in like Pennsylvania. I can't remember this. This was like almost 20 years ago, where this guy had like this huge farm, thousands of acres type thing. And essentially he set up automated guns that people could control and like webcams, and people could like go online, and it was all private property, and literally buy like an hour or 2 hours to go hunting. And then, they would sit there with their computer screen and with like the mouse and point and take the shot, kill the deer. And then after they killed something, then they would, turn the firearm off, and then they would go out, collect the animal, clean it, gut it, and then harvest it. And then they would send you the meat. And it was thousands of dollars, but the government was like, this is fucked up. Excuse my language. But the government was like, we're putting an end to this, because this is just, it's literally turning actual hunting into a video game. And it's taking the morals and the ethics out of it. And I thought that was a good move on the government's part.
It's taking the experience out of it. Like I ended up having 10 surgeries almost in a row in my 20s.
Oh, wow.
And I actually was a gym rat. It's hard to believe now. I was like a gym junkie. And I actually consciously made a decision to get into hunting as basically like a conscious decision for self. Like, what can I do that still can make me feel happy and fulfilled and give me exercise, instead of wallowing in depression or something in bed? And so like, what can I do? And so getting into hunting was like, I always was interested, but it was actually a conscious decision. Like, okay, I can't work out this to the level I used to with weights. So what can I do to take place. And that's actually when I got into hunting. It was almost like I chose it as a self-therapy. So and I went and did it on my own still. But like, I think that like you are robbing people of the experience. I think a lot of I don't high fence hunt because of that as well. I think you're robbed of the experience. I don't think you really earned it. I'm very big into public land hunting. I'm not going to say no to all private. Like I'm not, if somebody says, "Hey, come hunt at my ranch," I'm not going to tell them no if it's not high fence.
Right.
But I'm not like almost all my hunting has been public land, almost all of it, and every elk hunt has been public land. Every mule deer hunt has been public land. Every antelope hunt has been public land, and so I'm really like a big promoter of that. And I believe because like the harder you work for it, the more it's going to mean to you when you have it. The longer you're probably going to stick with it, and the more fulfilling it's going to be, and you get the experience, right? You get the fitness experience, the mental, maybe health experience of it. You get the challenge of it. All these things that are, in my opinion, important aspects of it. And you're robbing people of that on some of these other things, right? And they're not, and so even if it's not ethical or moral, I think it's just it's not the same. It's not as good in a way. But yeah, I don't know. I think that, I mean, I really just like, promote hunting. I help random, like non-resident people all the time. Like I'm not a licensed guide. It would be a felony if I charge, but I don't charge anyway. I help people every year, probably 15 days a year, full days a year hunting that I don't even really know. And I actually do it at a loss financially.
Okay.
And I've ran into non-residents on the mountain I help. Now, believe me, born and raised Wyoming people, they're not going to do that for you. They're going to like cuss you out and tell you to get lost, basically, probably. But I do that because I want to share that passion, and I have that passion for hunting. And yeah, I mean, I've had units where a lot of people have started hunting there and they got ruined. Like there's a lot of public land that is bad now for hunting. So I mean, like, but at the same time, I'm not willing to be like, hey, I'm not going to help you because of that. And ultimately, that is controlled more by the government level than by us hunters anyway. Like if that person didn't have the tag, another person's going to have the same tag. It makes no difference in a way. But I live in a county actually in Wyoming. Like a lot of Wyoming has tons of public access land. I live in the worst county, I think, in Wyoming, one of the worst in the country for landlocked public land, which was ranchers would buy up all the land around it, and they essentially charge you for trespass or use it as it's their own. And I believe that's wrong. I believe we should have easements.
Yeah, there should be an easement for sure. That's one of the things. Like, do you watch Meat Eater with like Steven Ranella?
A little bit. Yeah. He's from Michigan originally. Yeah.
Yeah. He talks about like in New England. So like I said, I grew up in New England, and out in New England, there is public land, but a lot of it's just private land in the woods. But for centuries, it's just been when it's hunting season. If you live rurally, you just expect that people are going to be on your property hunting. Like that's because there's a low amount of populace, but there's a high abundance of hunting animals or game to take. So that's just kind of been the expectation. Like when I grew up in New England in like the 1990s, that's how it was. Like I could walk out my house. My parents lived like in the woods of Meredith, New Hampshire, and we walk out with me and my friend Brian Case, and we could just walk into our neighbors' yards, and just there was no fences, there was no trespassing signs, and we could go wherever we needed to go hunting or even fishing, and we did. And then I went back to like visit like 20 years later. And a lot of people from like Massachusetts and New York and Connecticut had started to move up into like New Hampshire where I lived. And we went back to visit like the old property, and there was just no trespassing signs everywhere. Yeah. And that's one of the things like Steven Ranella was talking about on Meat Eater is he started like a trust or some sort of organization to actually buy up land in like Maine, New Hampshire, and Vermont, and actually turn it into its private land, but turn it into like public land for hunting, so people can still go and hunt the way that the tradition's always been. So it is kind of like a disappearing thing. Another thing that I see too, like here in Colorado, especially because I live in Colorado Springs, and Pikes Peak is literally like, if I was Uncle Rico, I could tell you I could throw that football over that mountain. It's that close to my house. But Pikes Peak is there's a lot of good elk around there. And the GMU that I've hunted over there has been ruined not by hunters, and I don't know if this is happening in Wyoming, but by side-by-sides and dirt bikes and quads. Is that happening in
Yeah,
Wyoming?
I don't think so. I mean, it might make it more difficult. I use a side by side for hunting to get to places.
Okay.
I don't think it's ruined it. I think that things that have made hunting on public land more difficult, and we'll try to break it down. All the ranches that landlocked public land and they have no easement and they charge you for access to use your land because it's our land is absolutely absurd to me. But that's because way back in the day they were allowed to, and they were the same people that owned the politicians that made these, like, allowed it, right? So it's like now to go back, you're messing with the sovereignty of public land or private land, which I also believe in that, and it's a very bad situation, right? But I believe we should have access to all that land. That's a huge problem where I live, and now private landowners giving access to public land that's landlocked or just access to hunt has become big money most places, which is sad to see. But anyway, that's one problem. Another problem is actually something that I love, and this is going to sound funny. Onyx Hunt and apps like that have opened people's eyes to tons of public land, and therefore your honey holes are getting destroyed because what once was thought you didn't have access, now because of apps like that, people realize, oh, I do have legal access, or this looks like a good area. And personally, a lot of my honey holes have been ruined by that. Even though I use it every day, I promote it. I'm like a brand ambassador for them. But that's the two edge. There's two edges to that sword. There's two sides to the sword on that. I still promote it, and I wouldn't stop it. But that's a reality of apps like that. The other aspect to this is that during the flu, the pandemic, people flooded and messed up a lot of things as well, but that's kind of thinning out because you had a lot of people that were just recreating, but they have the legal right to do it. And I'm not going to say they were wrong. They were using the land that is theirs, even though it wasn't for hunting, and that is fine, right? But that did affect things. You also have, I think, there's stuff as simple as like industry, right? It's kind of funny that a lot of people from the cities are like anti-hunting because you're ruining wildlife, but it's hilarious because the cities do damage things. Like even in Sheridan's only like 18,000. There was an 80-acre parcel owned by the city that allowed archery hunting. It was like insane. Like I could go 5 minutes from my house, I could hunt beautiful whitetails. It was like I owned 80 acres. It was awesome. And they developed it and turned it into recreating parks, and it destroyed it. I mean, there's nothing left of those deer. They're gone, and you can't hunt there anymore because everywhere there's a walkway, there's a pathway, there's a dirt. So they damaged that. So there's still a reality of that. There was one other point I was going to make as far as that's concerned, but now I'm forgetting it, honestly. There's a lot of sides to the coin. It's not always right and wrong. It's just the realities of life, right?
Right.
I think in the grand scheme of things, though, we forget that around the turn of the 1900s, there was almost no animals left. Like there was almost no whitetail left. There was almost no elk. There was like nothing left, and people hunted to sell meat, wild game, and they hunted to live off of it. And so this is a recent phenomenon where it's turned into like trophy hunting and hunting for sport is really still a recent phenomenon in reality. And we have more animals than we had around the 1900s. And we have great opportunity that we're like complaining. And we actually have a lot of opportunity that we like 100, 200 years ago, people didn't have. And so you can look at that as like, okay, be grateful for that, right? Like we have elk, now in areas they're putting them where they haven't been for like 150 years, 200 years. There hasn't been elk there, and they're reestablishing elk there.
Yeah, Kentucky, right? They're putting them out in like Kentucky and Tennessee and stuff like that, I think, or Pennsylvania too. Like they're pushing elk all the way down pretty far. But it reminds me too, it's like in Florida, because I have family that lives in Florida, dude. Like alligators for a long time were hunted to the near, like, I don't think it was extinction, but they were like endangered. They were very close to being endangered or something like that. So they said, you can't hunt alligators anymore. And now, because it's really hard to get a hunting license to hunt an alligator, alligators are so abundant, it's crazy. And
Right.
it's never been like that in like modern times. But I get what you're saying with the animals. I'd like to see the buffalo herds come back, but I don't think
Yeah.
that's going to ever happen. But I know, like here in Colorado, and I know we got to get off here soon, but here in Colorado, like the elk herds are getting so bad and the deer herds are getting so bad, they've reintroduced wolves because there's not enough people going out and hunting. And also Colorado makes it very difficult to go hunting. Colorado's like, hey, we're going to, break up archery, muzzleloader, and rifle. And then we're also going to break up each season into like 4 different quadrants, and you get 5 days and you can only hunt this tiny little small parcel of land, and they have like the high probability areas, and those are really tough to draw on, and they make it difficult for people to hunt successfully here in Colorado. I think personally, I mean, if for season hunters that live in the mountains, they're more successful. But for somebody like myself that lives in Colorado Springs, it's tough for me to be able to say, oh, I'm going to drive all the way up to, the Northwest Territory of Colorado and go up there every single weekend in order to stalk my animals before hunting season and know where they're going to be at. But that's just me.
Well, I do worry about especially liberal states over time, the legislation and whatnot, game and fish departments and things, basically outpricing hunters to the point where it's only a rich person thing, or to the point where it's basically like nobody does it, right? We've lost it as a culture. And they might do that through making it so expensive. That is one play they could make. And it's kind of being made to a degree already in a lot of states. To hunt elk, it is I would say it is very much a rich person sport. I'm not rich, and I had almost no money until 2 years ago, and then I got a little bit more, but like through working hard. But I don't. It is expensive to hunt elk for most people. That's a sad reality of it, and it takes a lot of hard work for sure.
Right.
So that's already kind of an existing problem in a way. But what other questions did you have? Any other questions or topics?
No, man. I know we gotta wrap it up. So at this point of the podcast, I'd just like to offer you the ability to talk about anything that you have going on right now. If you want to self promote or let us know what you coming down the pipeline, just go ahead, man, for sure. And thank you for coming on.
Oh yeah, no problem. Let's see. Well, I got a lot of short form videos coming out almost every day from SHOT Show and from some other range trips, from everything from bolt actions to semi-autos and everything in between. So a lot of shorts, and then we have a lot of shorts also on like new guns that are just coming out or haven't even really come out all the way yet, like they're not on the shelves yet, and some entertaining things. And then we have some full-length videos on new guns from certain companies, not a lot, but mostly bolt action rifles. And, like Palmetto State Armory's coming out with 2 bolt action rifles, which I didn't even know until I happened to be in their booth. I didn't even know
they made those.
They're not on the shelves yet. It'll probably be like a year, but they had tons of different models. They have 2 different like lines with tons of different variations, we'll say. And so I have some long form videos coming out on those and some shorts. Super interesting. Had no idea myself, like I said, until I actually was at SHOT Show and saw them that they were doing that. Also Stevens came out with a bolt action rifle. And then just a bunch of stuff like that. So cool. A bunch of short videos, long form videos, of new stuff coming out, and then some range videos just for fun. Like I have a bunch of range videos I went down to Florida and shot a bunch of different guns, and so I have a bunch of fun shorts just shooting random guns down there. The biggest thing that we're trying to do is we're starting a podcast. It's going to be a live stream podcast though, so it'll go to YouTube and then a bunch of different platforms as well as some podcast platforms and just audio version. And that'll be running March through July. Just 2 episodes is what we're planning per month for now. We might increase that. We might end up doing it year round. We'll see. But we're kind of doing a pilot season, so to speak. Haven't done any consistent lives since, I don't know, a year or 2 ago. So, and never really did it a lot. So we're going to try that out, and we're going to try to have some really cool guests on. Hopefully people like Jim Harmer from Backfire will be a guest, and We even got a guy, and I'm terrible with my memory, and I should obviously remember this name, but it was a guy who was on the Sean Ryan podcast, actually. I don't know. Wow, it's one of the biggest podcasts on YouTube right now. Anyways, he was a guest on there.
It is,
He was a CIA operative, but it wasn't the one with long hair. That's kind of goofy. It wasn't that guy. He's been on there a bunch, but we might.
I thought maybe you were going to tell me you were going to go hunt. What's that ranch up in the northeast quadrant of Utah that's got all the alien sightings?
Oh, area, was it 51? Area 51?
No, not Area 51. That's Nevada. No, I'm talking about like it's in Utah, and it's like the northeast portion of Utah. I forget the name of the ranch, but there's like a whole bunch of paranormal stuff, and he's had the guy on his show like twice now.
No,
but I think it'd be kind of fun to go out there and like hunt that area.
This guy wasn't, because he's had a bunch of different like CIA and special forces guys. This guy was like on one podcast, and his nickname was like the John Wick of the CIA or something, because he killed like 26 people in one building clearing by himself. And supposedly,
holy shit.
Legit. But yeah, I think it was like 26 or 24 people. Anyways, that's not why I want to have him on, but because I mean, like, I don't know, that's kind of a morbid reason in a way. But anyways, he's supposed to be, you know, like a decorated vet and stuff like that. So he might jump on.
That's awesome.
I'm not sure if he'll actually get on or not. Right. I kind of have just a verbal yes from some people that know him and are working with an organization that he's a part of.
Cool.
But yeah, should have some cool guests and talk about a lot of like bolt action rifle stuff, long range shooting, and Western hunting stuff, is, you know, along with maybe some law enforcement and veteran type material as well.
That'd be awesome, dude. I look forward to seeing that.
Yeah, it should be fun.
For sure. Well, dude, thank you for coming on, man. I hope that I can have you back on, or maybe I can actually visit you up in Wyoming. I think that would be a pretty cool thing because you're not that far from me. But yeah, absolutely. Thank you for coming on, Steven. Thank you.
Yep, no problem. I enjoyed it.
All right.